Welcome to my recap of films from 2011, arranged from worst to best. Keep in mind that I only saw 11 movies in the cinema this year. I will be seeing Melancholia and David Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo later in January, but for now I can only include films from 2011 that I saw in that year. There were a lot of great movies that I didn't get a chance to see, so I apologize if some of your top picks aren't in this list. All I can say before we start is that my recap is quite a mix. We begin the thankfully short bad list with Transformers: Dark of the Moon. This last entry in Michael Bay's trilogy has a fairly likable turn from Shia LaBeouf and excellent action in the final third, but it also has contrived dialogue, a lack of chemistry between the leads, obnoxious characters, juvenile frat boy humor, and a poor screenplay like the other Transformers movies. I would have put Dark of the Moon in the mediocre category because of its cool action, but it would have been the only movie in that category, so it's only among the bad movies for reasons of tidiness. One of two Emily Browning movies on this list, Sucker Punch is both superficial and confusing. First off, what is the point of the multiple levels of reality in the film? I can understand how someone might escape a traumatic situation by retreating into a comforting fantasy, but why is that imagined refuge a 1920s bordello, and why couldn't the characters just switch straight from the asylum level to the action level? The bordello has no purpose other than for director Zack Snyder to show us skimpy outfits and beautiful set pieces. The heroines, especially Baby Doll, the protagonist, are quite bland, and the action scenes have barely any suspense. The robot samurai battle is okay, and the robot train and World War II zombie Nazi battles are well staged, but they all take place in Baby Doll's head, so there is no sense of danger or risk. The dragon fight is also poor and silly. Even the external conflict isn't very pressing. In the asylum level, Baby Doll must escape before she is lobotomized, but this is overshadowed by the much less important, even trivial conflict of her having her virginity taken in the bordello level. The Fetch Quest narrative is simply an excuse to show stylized, uneven action scenes with little tension, and the way they parallel the actions in the bordello level is loose at best. You could take Sucker Punch as a tale of female empowerment, with its female cast kicking ass to save themselves, but since the girls are so sexy and fetishized, and are surrounded by things boys tend to like, guns, swords, war, robots, dragons, etc., I don't think the creators had this in mind. It's not an atrocious movie. The intro is dark and stylish. A couple of the action scenes are just brainless fun, the aesthetic is jaw-dropping, and Oscar Isaac is entertaining as the smarmy villain, but it's still one of the most unengaging movies of the year, and certainly the most shallow. Sleeping Beauty has Emily Browning naked in it, but by the film's own design, we can't enjoy it. There is nothing remotely entertaining about this film. The conflict is paper-thin, most of the subplots and metaphors are worthless, the pacing is slow and dull, and since we barely know who the protagonist, Lucy, is, the prostitution scenes don't have the impact that they should have. Sleeping Beauty is a valid response to the objectification of women, but it's not fun or insightful in any way. And the worst film I saw all year was Breaking Dawn Part 1. This will be a condensed version of a fun crossover with R.M. Loner that I've yet to release. Like every other Twilight movie, the three leads deliver bland performances. Kristen Stewart is as emotive as a brick, and her character is an inconsiderate whore. There is absolutely no chemistry between Edward and Bella, and the narrative is terribly tedious and drawn out, but this latest film has a couple of offensive additions to the formula. The fact that Edward and Bella's romance is completely unconvincing is more pronounced in Breaking Dawn. This couple has no shared interests or pastimes, so their relationship is completely dependent on them having sex. It's that shallow. And after Edward and Bella have sex for the first time, Bella literally starts presenting like a horny animal by wearing lingerie and flopping into bed, which is probably the most shameless scene of the year. As you all know, Edward unwittingly impregnates his new wife with a rapidly growing vampire-human hybrid during their honeymoon. Even though this hybrid is sapping Bella's health and could very likely kill her, and eventually does, she insists on keeping it. It is her choice, of course, but even a lot of pro-lifers concede that a fetus can be terminated if it is putting the mother's life at genuine risk. Speaking of abortion, the way Edward and his family vehemently, even angrily, talk about aborting the fetus and getting that thing out of her makes them sound like biased portrayals of abortion supporters in an anti-abortion PSA. That's the really offensive part. Breaking Dawn Part 1 is an awful, even insulting movie and earns its status as the worst movie of 2011.